Hero's journey you'll be on.
Yes.
Technically, we are both sober Jedi masters.
Really?
That is 10 to 12 years of steadfast sobriety, a revered title bestowed upon those who have ascended to the great heights of wisdom, leadership, and insight, mirroring the revered leaders within the Jedi Order. Now, Tony, however, is in a whole different class. He is part of the Sober Not High Council, a legendary assembly of the most esteemed and powerful members of the Jedi Order, symbolizing the pinnacle of strength, guidance, and influence within the galaxy.
Wow.
Welcome to the Sober Curator podcast, where sobriety isn't just a lifestyle choice, it's the ultimate life hack. I'm Alysse Bryson, your fearless guide to a world where hangovers are canceled, fun is mandatory, and we still know how to shut down a dance floor, just with better shoes.
And I'm Tamar Routly, aka T-Bouge, your co-pilot, chaos coordinator, and the one who keeps Alysse from turning this podcast into a full-blown reality show. Buckle up, sober party people.
From lifestyle and travel to pop culture and zero-proof cocktails, we're serving up the stories, trends, and guests that prove sobriety isn't just about what you're missing. It's about finally remembering where you left your keys. Let's get the party started. There is a 12-step Yoda version. There is some Sober Curator Star Wars inspired merch. There's a video with a bunch of Star Wars contributors because in 2024, May the 4th be with you actually fell on one of our business meetings. And I politely I asked nicely everyone to come dressed as Star Wars. And then there's even a Baby Yoda mocktail recipe. There's just so much goodness on that page. You definitely want to check out May the Sober Force be with you.com. But back to the task at hand. Hey, superstars. Welcome back to the Sober Curator podcast, your weekly dose of sober living, pop culture loving, and maybe a few mocktail spills along the way. Today's guest is our very own stoic Tony Harte, who penned a brilliant 3-part series that had us all feeling like we were in a 12-step version of The Mandalorian. Tony is a contributor, a creative, and a recovery rock star. But today we're celebrating him as a writer with his mini epic, The Hero's Journey of Recovering Addict. It's part memoir, part myth, and totally binge-worthy. Also, he may or may not be channeling Obi-Wan in recovery circles, but we'll find out today. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I mean, how do you even, where do we even start after that opening?
I'm just, my jaw's on the floor.
I mean, the force is strong with all
we
three
are
of us.
already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tchotchke's up, people. Let's get this party started. All right, Tony, let's get to the bones of it. Why was the hero's journey as part of your storytelling framework in this 3-part series?
Well, clearly Star Wars is my favorite franchise of all time. And early on, when I had learned that George Lucas had studied Joseph Campbell in his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, that just caught fire with me. So I started studying Joseph Campbell. He's a professor of mythology, ancient literature, all kinds of storytelling, religion. And basically, he in the late 1949 was when he published Hero with 1,000 Faces, which is he looked across all the mythology and all the religions and all the ancient stories. He started to see this pattern. And that pattern eventually evolved into what he called the hero's journey. So the actual path the hero's journey goes back over 4,000 years. Like Gilgamesh, the story of Gilgamesh was the first hero's journey over 4,000 years ago. And then you've got the Iliad and Homer and Hercules, and you've got all these very ancient stories that follow this arc. But it was Joseph's and all of his research that kind of pulled this together and saw these patterns and developed this framework. So as I was watching Star Wars once again, I realized, how much of a treasure sobriety is. And a lot of our path is seeking that treasure. And I just thought to myself, I wonder if this maps out to the hero's journey. So I just started thinking through it and working through it and building it. But we see the hero's journey everywhere today, especially in movies, The Lord of the Rings, The Hunger Games. I mean, even like The Lion King and Finding Nemo, that they're all following that hero's arc.
Mm-hmm.
I do have to ask, Tony, how many times have you watched Star Wars? And can you even give us a number?
I probably can't give you a number, but I can tell you in 1977 when it came out, I saw it 14 times. And when it came out in the theater, and I can't remember the exact prices, but I remember the Star Wars tickets were almost double the cost of a regular movie.
So like $1?
Yeah, it was like $2 and movies were $1. So
Yeah.
I mean, I was mowing yards and picking up sticks and had to get me out there. But I'd have to say I'm at least above 100 times that I've seen A New Hope anyway, which is my favorite.
Is that the one you've seen the most? That's definitely the one I've seen the most. I mean,
yeah, and that's the one that I used in the articles.
Yeah,
because each movie has separate journeys and phases, and Luke's journey just continues and continues and continues. So, I've seen it a few times.
Mm-hmm. Did you see yourself as the reluctant hero early on, or was there another archetype that surprised you?
I think reluctant hero was definitely a good archetype. I was the morning after my 21st birthday, I crashed another vehicle, which when I was drinking, I had a propensity to drive my car into inanimate objects. And I flew out the windshield. My car landed like 100 feet from me. And then 4 days later, I was in a treatment center. So, scared shitless. I had known that I had a problem for a long time. We kind of go through that process. But definitely, as I went into treatment, I was kind of like, I don't know about this shit. But the first 4 or 5 days, I read the big book cover to cover. And from that point on, I was like, this book was written for me, written about me. And, this is my commitment from here forward. So yeah, definitely a reluctant hero. I have evolved quite a bit over the years. I would say my primary archetype right now is the jester.
And why do you say that?
Because I just love to make people laugh. And I probably make myself laugh more than anybody else.
Yeah.
Because I just think I'm hilarious.
Yeah.
Tony, I'm right there with you. I have people laugh at me not because of what I say today. It's more because they think it's entertaining that I think I'm so funny. So I'm so grateful to hear that from somebody else. Cause
Yeah.
But I will say there is actually nothing that brings me more pleasure than watching another person, especially you notice this with children, right? When they crack themselves up, like the joy of that, like I get more joy out of that than cracking myself up. And I think I'm hilarious. Like, I just think that is one of there are many treasures that we get to experience in a lifetime, but having people close to you and watching them crack themselves up, I'm here for it all day. That's really good, Tony. I really like that.
Tony, in part 1, you introduced the ordinary world of addiction. And I, of course, took some notes because so much of it I could relate. And the call to step into something unknown. What was the biggest challenge in writing this piece? And you and I actually, before we started recording, talked about how, music can be one of those things that can bring you back and, into that time. But, I know when I was writing, to go back there and to recognize those pivotal moments, like what was like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting how this does all kind of overlap. I mean, obviously, crossing the threshold I crossed it twice kind of in my mind. I crossed it once when I went into treatment, nice safe space to work on my Jedi skills. And then when I left treatment and had to go function in the real world, that was kind of a second crossing of the threshold. But the hero's journey is never linear, right? So it's always bouncing around among different phases, or, for many of us, we stay in that ordinary world for decades, right? And we get to the point where we know we have a problem and we want to get better, and then we can't, and we can't, and we can't, and we can't. But every time, we kind of have a tragedy or, have really bad consequences, and we say, oh, I got to stop this. We move one step forward, right? So, even just crossing the threshold for the alcoholic and the addict, it is a journey all by itself. And it's just the beginning of the hero's journey, because we know that putting the plug in the jug, that's kind of the easy part once you get it done. And then you have to learn to live life, in an entirely new way.
It reminds me of, like, in early sobriety, I was really proud of the fact that I came in and I never went back out. I've never had a technical relapse since I had an official sober date, but that is just horse hooey. Like, that is not true, because, how many times did I stop and start and fail to get a date at all? Right. And it was, I remember when I was several days in and I was at a meeting and there was a sign-in sheet and I was supposed to put a date down, and I was like, so I kind of thought back, like, I think it was this date, but it was, it was so blurry in those first weeks that I'm, can't be 100% certain, but I'm fairly certain. What was that? I mean, getting sober at 21, that's very young, especially in that era, right? It's more, I think it's more common now than it was back then, from what I have experienced and what I have read and watched. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, and at the time my alma mater is Ball State University, and we had a number of years where we were in the top party schools of Playboy. So I was in the environment. Luckily for me, there was a clubhouse on campus. So, I lived there before classes, after classes. And for me too, I haven't had a relapse, and I've come to realize that that's not anything that I've done. It just hasn't been part of my path, right? And it's part of other people's path. It's like getting to that threshold, it's kind of trying to get to that bottom in order to get, completely hopeless and, getting started in the program. So yeah, I have a hard time with folks that get all judgy with folks that relapse, because it could just as easily been a part of my path as anybody else's. I'm just fortunate that it wasn't.
Well, and I think in your article, when you talk about, Luke actually refusing to take that call to adventure, right? Like a few times until things got really bad, and he came home and his home was burnt down and his aunt and uncle didn't survive. But like when he actually answered the call to adventure And, he met Leia and Han Solo and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he started to build this community. And I think that it's something that I have witnessed a lot, is that people think they can do this by themselves, and they take that call to adventure and they're like, I got this, but then they step away from the community side of it. And I love how you tie this into the article, that like Luke dealt with some very scary things in those early, like in the first movie. But he had people around him and he had mentors. Like my first mentor used to piss me off. And, you even say it in the article where you're like, they're not always nice human beings, but you know what? Those people saved my life, and they still do today, because I needed someone to say, Tamar, like, smarten up. Right. So I love, Tony, how you tie this all in there.
Me too.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, if you think about, Luke crossing the threshold, he had his commitment to his aunt and uncle because they had raised him, right? So he felt this obligation. And when we're in our active addiction, we have those things that we think are our obligations, right? That, hey, I'm the party guy. I can't not be the party guy. Hey, I don't drink as much as Joe does. So we have all these obligations where we refuse to make that call as well, just like Luke did. And it took losing his aunt and uncle was kind of that final step that, freed him of all his obligations and got to the, bottom of his hopelessness, and he was able to move on. And then, like you said, finding Obi-Wan and him ultimately, becoming a mentor, and helping to guide. And then, they picked up the different skill sets along the way in order, to kind of ferry the hero through the journey. So, on the mentor piece, that's such an incredibly important part of sobriety, right? I mean, it's everybody's got heroes, some it's our parents or firemen, policemen, whatever. We've all got our heroes, but early in sobriety, we have to get into those rooms, and we have to find those people who have what we want, right? It's easy to look around the room and, you hear people complaining and everything else, or being negative, and they're just where they're at. What I'm looking for is who has what I want, in sobriety. And they don't even have to be sober longer than I do, right? So maybe there's a guy that's 5 years sober that has completely healed his family and, has just done amazing work on his family front that I haven't achieved in my length of sobriety. So he has something I want. So I'm going to learn from that guy.
I had that once. I've had a handful of mentors, sponsors, whatever you want to call them. And I had one once who had less sober time than I had, but she had done more work, and gotten better results. So yes, I had someone who had less sober time, but they had put in more work. And that was what I was attracted to. The other thing I think about all of this, Tony, is for me personally, being a mentor versus being a mentee is like quadruple million more rewarding. Oh, yeah. And so, I get really defensive when I hear someone say, oh, I've tried 12 steps and they don't work. And it's like, well, have you done all of them in order thoroughly? Because in my experience, most people don't. And they stop somewhere along the way, and then somehow their story morphs into that they've done them. And then they say they don't work. Well, yeah, they don't work when you don't actually do all of them. But it's been on the other side of serving someone else that I have reaped the biggest rewards. And I know that your answer is the same.
Yeah, I think a lot of the articles that I write on my site about working the program, I try to put things in a way to start to take judgment out, right? Mm-hmm. And, the people that come in and say AA is not for me, it's not my job to defend, but I may try to educate some. I may just, hey, I don't The whole basis of Alcoholics Anonymous is one drunk working with another. Did you give that a
That's
try
it.
for a while? It's just kind of ways to, again, and I really have to work on this. I'm not here to defend the 12 steps. I'm here to educate on them. And the more I embrace that role, the less I get caught up in, we all go through all the rationalization and the thinking and all that crazy stuff. It takes forever to work through. But yeah, I think the longer I'm sober, the more, like you said, working with others and educating and trying to deliver, content that's reasonable for people, right? The reason Alcoholics Anonymous split from the Oxford group was because the Oxford group had 4 absolutes, and AA doesn't have any absolutes, right? So that's part of what, again, I try to get through in my writing is try to make it more accessible, let people be more lenient on themselves, let people take the time to do the work, and they ain't lying. If you work it, it works.
Well, and I love your approach with this series. It makes it digestible to somebody who might have been resistant before, right? And I think that's why I personally gravitate towards looking at sobriety and recovery through the lens of pop culture, because it I don't want to go as far as saying it destigmatizes it, but it just makes it a more approachable topic. People are more likely to lean in because it's more relatable. And sometimes when you are talking about a book that is that old, that has language, the writing style of it, or some of the content is outdated for sure. But if you get stuck on that, you're going to miss where all the good stuff is. Right.
Yeah.
And I also loved how you talked about that our stories aren't linear. It's not like our life is just, once we make this decision, we're just going to magically always be getting better and more in the straight upward pattern. No, it's like this crazy loop-de-loop and backwards and up and down and backwards and forwards. And that's the reality.
And you think about, like, in Star Wars, right? When Luke first picked up that lightsaber, he wasn't that good.
No.
Right? And he had to keep practicing and practicing and practicing. And so, like, I think about that in the 12 steps how there is a lot of people who say it doesn't work for me, and not doing it. Like, it's not just a one-time thing, right? It's something you have to do repeatedly, because I know even today, almost at 13, I'm still learning new things. I mean, look at Luke, right? When he first went up against Darth Vader, he lost his hand. But he kept going. That is the road of recovery. You can't just do something and say, okay, well, I should be cured and I should be good. It's like, no. This is an ongoing journey. And if you want to be a Jedi master, you keep doing these things over and over.
Yeah, because the 12 steps and life are not independent things, right? And part of our journey is that we're working these 12 steps, and then things happen in our lives, divorces, deaths of loved ones, deaths of pets, and these opportunities come up to say, okay, how did I handle that situation? Was I working my steps? Was I able, a lot of stoicism that I write about is exactly handling adversity, right? How do we handle adversity? And in sobriety, something that it was hard for me at the beginning, but it's really hard to realize that when we get sober, we have to take full responsibility for our lives. If we're in situations that are unfair, unjust, it doesn't matter. What matters is how we respond to that. And that's how we grow, and that's how we evolve. The first time I go through something, and I might get in an argument with somebody over something, and I go back and look at it and go, wow, that was dumb. So if that life situation ever comes up again, I'm like, I'm not arguing about it. Look, one step forward. So, the 12 steps in life are intertwined, and you have to look at it that way, right? that you don't just work the 12 steps over here and I have my life here. It's everyday occurrences in life that we integrate the steps into.
And I think this is an article, part 2, is you talk about like triggers. You talk about as we grow in our recovery and we stack these against us, and you talked about divorce, you talked about all these things, like that stuff happened well before they actually happen. And
Right.
You also talk about like internal and external enemies, which I love because it's like, it blows my mind how relatable to the series this is, but it's like those internal ones, it's self-doubt, it's shame, it's resentment, right? The external, how you like old friends, enablers, right? Those are the enemies in our story.
Yeah. And sometimes it's really drastic when we leave that ordinary world. I mean, it was traumatizing for me because literally all the people that I partied with and all the people in my life, that was my life. Like I didn't have relationships outside of the people that I practiced my addiction with. And a good half of those people I had known since pre-K, kindergarten. I mean, these were people that I've had life experiences with that they were part of me. And, the changing people, places, and things, I couldn't hang out with them anymore. I mean, luckily 2 or 3 of them have found extended sobriety. A couple have died, but when I was in treatment, I truly took it into my heart that if I were to ever actively start using again, that was a sign that I wanted to die. I tell my loved ones that. I tell my friends that. I'm like, if you ever see me use, that I just want to die. And that's what made it a little bit easier to change the people, places, and things, right? So it was like, I have this past, these relationships, these memories that are just a part of me, but I have this other calling. There can't be a part of me if there is no me. It's tough.
Well, and there is the cliche saying that we all hear when we first get sober is you just have to change one thing, everything. And I was like, that is not, I don't have to. I'm special. I'm an exception. I'll show you. I'm going to change some things. Sure. Arguably I need to, but I'm definitely not changing everything. I'll show you. And when I look back, it wasn't until I truly changed everything, which took me years to be clear, that I started to get any real traction. I may have gotten sober dates that I could check off on a calendar, but I didn't get mental health dates. Let me tell you that, because I was still not wanting to live at 5 years sober, 4 years sober, somewhere in there. So if you can't it isn't just about the beginning and changing everything is not an overnight thing. It takes a lot of time, but I don't think I have any of the characters in my life anymore. I mean, I'm sure I'm connected to some on Facebook, but I don't have regular conversations with anyone that used to be part of that lifestyle.
Yeah, and those are the moments in the journey, where the reward is. People, and this is absolutely fine. I judge nobody, but people get in the program and they say change everything, and they pick that subset of things that they're comfortable changing, and they change those and they stop. Right. And that's fine. They stay sober, their life's better. That's perfectly fine. But people that move on, and like you said, once you get kind of the easier ones done and you decide to take on 2 or 3 of the harder ones, that's when we really start to get the rewards in our journey. And we realize that we're really actually working a program. We're not around the program. We're not, participating in a program. We're actually working a program. So those, evolutions are all part of that hero's journey.
In the final piece, the hero's journey ends. It's where it comes full circle, and you write about returning home and how that changed things. Like, what did home mean to you? What does home mean to you?
Yeah, I think I've struggled with the home part a lot. I've had multiple divorces, all of them sober, so I was dumb enough to enter the relationship sober, so I really didn't have any good excuses. But so my home really became AA. I mean, like I said early on, that's where I lived. Those were the people, I knew. Those were the people where I had the people I didn't like, the people I liked, the all the early stuff that goes on in AA. But it's the one thing, outside of the loving support of my parents and knowing that they're always there for me. AA is the one thing that is always there for me. So if I'm feeling bad, if I'm just in a bad spot, even if I don't go to spout wisdom and I just sit in the back of a room, I'm better automatically. So, and I think kind of return home, a lot of different times throughout the process, right? But yeah, I would say home for me is wherever my parents are and AA for sure.
So, Tony, one thing I have to say that I got to read your pieces first, obviously, because they get sent in through me, and then they get passed to Libby, who does the grammar policing, and then they come back to me, and I get to do the artwork for the site, which is, possibly my favorite part. And while I never say that I'm good at it, I do say, how we talked about at the beginning of this call, like making ourselves laugh. I was just telling Tamar yesterday, like in the morning, the first thing I do when I log on is I check the site, make sure everything's running, right? And yesterday I was like, man, this is a cool looking site. Like, I just love it, And so I don't actually care if nobody else does, like, cause I'm so happy with it. Right. And so working on your 3-part series brought me particular joy, because it's no secret that I love Star Wars. It's no secret that I love playing with artwork in a different way. And I started hunting down all these Star Wars Lego figures. Now, I was limited. I couldn't exactly follow along picturesque exactly how you were writing. So I had to have a little artistic flexibility there and creativity. I did some layering of things. I'm definitely not a trained graphic designer, but I can Canva with the best of them. Actually, I am a PicMonkey girl, for the record. I don't really like Canva. Anyway, so it brought me a lot of joy to read through your articles and be the first person to see them, and then also to try to match artwork with it kind of along the way. That was really fun for me.
You did a fabulous job, and your artwork is the best. I like 9 out of 10 images that you do for my articles over the ones that I do.
I'll take 9 out of 10. I'll totally take 9 out of 10. And I think that's one of my favorite parts about the Sober Curator is it is a group effort, because all these different people touch a piece before it gets to the reader's eyes, right? Alex does her SEO magic in the background and social media, and Libby does, editing, and I do the artwork, and you do the writing. And then it comes together in this collaborative piece that is mostly you, but it's got hints of other people. Nope. And that is not unlike what we're talking about today, right? Like, it's a lot of you, but as Tamar talked about, as you talked about in the series, like, it's a community. None of us can do this on our own. I've never met anyone that can totally do it on their own and also make themselves laugh.
Right.
So, Tony, in the movies too, I mean, I think you get this at the end of the movie. Like, it's like, okay, he's just started his journey. Right. Luke is and he's been through so much in that first movie, but like, where does the real work begin? Because it really, at that point, okay, yeah, you get sober, you've built a community around you, but things don't get easier, right? They just get less hard. So let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I think, the real work is kind of like we said, it starts after you put the plug in the jug, right? And get busy working the steps. And we all, you have people that dive deep. You have people that just skim the surface. You have people that are capable of either one of those, right? Some of us just aren't capable of, doing much more than putting the plug in the jug. Is it alcohol and drugs? I mean, they damage our minds, they damage our bodies. There are people out there that just getting by and staying sober is enough, right? And then, there's other people that are a little neurotic like myself that, I study every single religion and, I've studied all the philosophies and I landed on stoicism and I'm like, I'm taking what the big book in AA gives me, but I'm building on it. Right. So, the big book takes you through the 12 steps and gets you sober, but it doesn't really address a lot of the mental health stuff that it takes to really evolve in your sobriety, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it gets you started on the path and it's a foundation that you always go back to. But if you're inclined to, there's all these other tools out there in the world, whether it's philosophies or, meditations or yoga or, breathing exercises, some of this all sounds all foo-foo-y, but, it works for people. And, if we want to continue to improve our lives and how we feel about ourselves, we have to go out there and experiment, right? We have to go out there and try things. And if it's not us, it's not us.
And I love how you bring up the exploration, right? Because we talk about being honest, open-minded, and willing. And, it's one of the things, and I get judgy about it, I can own this, is that when I hear people say that they don't like programs like Alcoholics Anonymous because it's a religious program, that almost puts me over the edge because it's like, well, clearly you haven't actually read the literature. And I had my own mom tell me that a friend of hers didn't want to be part of AA because it was religious. And my mom was trying to convince me of that. And I was like, okay, then. But it really and it says in the literature, right? They're not part of that. And it's very clear that it's your perception of a higher power. And I think part of the ongoing work is discovering for yourself outside of any program, what does that higher power mean to you, right? And having the courage to explore that. I mean, I've done the same thing because I remember I thought, well, the steps can be my choose your own adventure and I'm just going to leave out anything that says God, right? Well, I realized that doesn't actually work, not so well. But when people actually, kind of grabbed me and said, Tamar, read the book and listen, I was like, okay, right? Because these people scared me. And I did that and I became more open-minded. And, like you said, there's so much work outside of it. And it's part of the many things I love about the Sober Curator is you'll hear Alysse talk about this on previous episodes all the time, is that there's so many things to help you get sober and put the plug in the jug, like you state, but there's not a lot of stuff that helps people stay here and that gives them sober lifestyle, information, community on an ongoing basis. And we need more of that, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, the biggest theme I try to get through in a lot of my writing is people don't realize the flexibility built into the 12 steps, right? There are no musts. They're all suggestions. We talk to other alcoholics. We read their stories. We see what's worked for them. We try it in our own lives. But, at the end of the day, there's suggestions on how I work the fourth step. And at the end of the day, I can work it however the hell I want to. And I'm still working it. That, it may not have the degree of honesty, so I'm not going to get the reward. But at the same time, if you look at almost every step, people view it as a rigid program. And really early on in Alcoholics Anonymous, it was very rigid. But when they got into writing the big book and starting to, figure out how to make this digestible for everybody, it's a structured program, but there's so much flexibility that if somebody really wants to get sober, there's no reason you can't make the 12 steps work for you.
Yeah, I've had, as we call them, and my friends, it drives them crazy, normie friends, say everybody should go through these.
That's
and
right.
it's true. And there's articles actually out there. I should try and find one and put it in the show notes that they've talked about how the 12 steps are very scientific. And it's no wonder why they work for many, many, many people. So, and I am incredibly grateful that I was exposed to that way. And I'm not one of those people that says you have to get sober a certain way, because there is lots of different pathways. And I mean, really, whatever works for people, let's just get people here, right? Because it is such a wonderful life. And I just, Tony, I love how you tied in Star Wars and the hero's journey into this conversation, because maybe that will be what somebody needs, right, to start this adventure and be their own hero.
You know, there is an online group that has meetings, and all they talk about is Taylor Swift songs. So, Tony, we could start a Star Wars meeting. I mean, between the two of us, I think we could hold it down. The force is strong.
I'm still working on the scriptures of the Church of Yoda. So so far I'm at the book of Anakin, but we're getting there.
Well, I want to move to some of these would you rather, but it's so loud. So,
Okay.
Tamar, maybe you should do them today.
I will start.
Okay.
So as Alysse is getting her lawn taken care of, I mean, I think that's one of the many gifts of recovery, is that you can pay somebody eventually, because you become a productive member of society, to mow your lawn for you. I mean, look at her owning her time. I love it. So I get to introduce this segment of the show, which I love so much. It's called Sober Shots. So it's just a quick fire round. Tony, you're going to just give us your first initial response. And of course, we tailored this for you and for your love of Star Wars today. So if Alysse wants to jump in, she can, but I have some that I would like to ask you. So are you ready, Tony?
I'm ready.
Okay. The first one.
Wait, do you need to stretch, Tony? You might need to stretch a little bit.
Yeah. Do you need to stretch? I mean, yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
We don't-
That's the spirit.
We do not want you to get hurt during the rapid fire round. Okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
Tony, would you rather have Chewbacca as your sober companion, keeping in mind he never stops growling, or Princess Leia as your sponsor, but she gives really intense pep talks?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I got to go with the Wookiee, because I think there's just a level of wisdom there that we just can't comprehend yet.
I actually have a mask where I think I wore that last Star Wars day at our Sober Curator. Yep. See? Okay. Let's ask another one. Would you rather face your inner demons in a sober therapy session with Yoda, or a family intervention with Darth Vader?
It's got to be Yoda all the way. I mean, if I were ever to become president, there would be a statue of Yoda in every state capital.
Yes.
It would just be required, because he is the epitome of the Jedi and my favorite character ever. And I hope as I get older, I start to look like it.
You never know. You just keep going on this here. It's a call to adventure. I think we just heard Tony's next call to adventure.
That's right. I'm trying to I hear your ears get bigger as you get older. So I'm working on ways to accelerate that.
Yeah. We're going to start commenting. Tony, you're looking a little green.
There you go.
The skin dye is really working for you. Okay. Another question. Would you rather be a sober Jedi Knight, constantly tempted by the dark side, or a clean and serene Sith Lord trying to manage their anger in step work?
That's a tough one. I can definitely see the benefits of both. I would say for myself, because I tend to be self-defeating in most of my thoughts and actions, and use that as a challenge to grow, that I would probably go with the Sith one on this one, just because I like the challenges.
Alysse, what about you?
I can talk now. And what I really want to know, although I think I know the answer, Tony, would you rather attend an intergalactic sober dance party with the Ewoks or go to a quiet force meditation led by Obi-Wan?
Ewoks, Ewoks, Ewoks. Again, I think those, except for Jar Jar Binks and his whole disaster, I think the Wookiees and the little guys, there's just some ancient wisdom there that I cannot get enough of.
You're not wrong, my friend. You're not wrong. Did I tell you guys that I once met Carrie Fisher?
No.
I love
buried the lead, didn't I? Yes, she was in Seattle doing she was on a stand-up tour. And this was, her book has what Wishful Drinking had already been out for a while. And I really need to get that one reviewed up on the site. But she was here in Seattle performing, and I was in the second row. So basically I could, touch her, and she was hilarious. And she at that time was sober and did reference her sobriety in the talk. And she said, I remember her saying something that to me at the time was so profound. Because in early recovery, I didn't know, am I supposed to say I'm sober? Am I supposed to say I'm an alcoholic? Am I supposed to say I'm an alcoholic and an addict? Like there's a lot of terminology, and there still is, and labels when it comes to this community. And, whatever you end up labeling yourself is totally fine. I just didn't know, I didn't know. So at that point I was saying I was an alcoholic and an addict because I'd heard other people doing it. Right. And she said something to the effect of, saying that you're from Washington and from Seattle, it's the same fucking thing. You don't need to say both. Right. Stop showing off. And I was like, yeah.
Awesome. That
was like wisdom. And I just realized that, yes, the only reason people added a second label is because they wanted to be like, ooh, I was worse off than you were, and we see that because guess what? It's humans in recovery circles, humans being humans. So that was really profound. And then I got to meet her at the meet and greet after the fact. And, as much as we love Star Wars, and I can't imagine what it is like to have your whole life after playing that role. Nobody sees you for you ever again. They really don't. Right. Yeah. Like, and then you compile that with a drug and alcohol problem and wealth, which means you have access and resources to unlimited things usually. And I can't even imagine what that was like. Can't even imagine. Yes. Big fan though. Big fan of Star Wars, big fan of Carrie Fisher and everyone in the films and series. And even though I don't love the new ones, I love Disney for keeping it all alive. And of course, for having the theme parks and for there being so much merchandise. And, I'm just here. I'm here for all of it. Speaking of merchandise, you know what time it is, T-Bouge?
Oh, I do. I think it's
It's time for the Tchotchke Showdown. And I don't pick this ahead of time, Tony, because I have so much random crap. I don't have to. But let me find where it is that I want to pull out today. I have found it. Please hold.
And listeners, and I think Tony is probably going to challenge Alysse soon. If you like this part of the show and you have a tchotchke or 3 that you would like to try and dethrone the queen of tchotchkes, then let us know. If you write into the Sober Curator at gmail.com, you can potentially be on another episode, a future episode called the Tchotchke Showdown, where we'll be judging literally. And, you never know, you might meet Tony and a few of the other Sober Curators as you try and take on the Queen of Tchotchke. So that's a new segment that's coming up. So make sure you write into us if you want to take down Alysse.
My name is the Tchotchke Queen.
The Tchotchke Queen.
Tchotchke Queen. Yes. Okay. So today's Tchotchke Queen show and tell, Tony, is something handcrafted by my father, Jerry Bryson, who is the one who originally introduced me to Star Wars. And I wish that the vessel holding this collection of tchotchke amazing things was Star Wars. It's not. This just happens to be the vessel I'm holding it in. If anyone has a Star Wars themed tote, little small bag about this size, please send me the link. I'd love to buy it to hold what I'm about to show you. It's very impressive. So my dad crochets. He does it while he's watching football. He does it while he's watching golf. He's very good. He can make all kinds of things, blankets, tablecloths, gloves, hats, scarves, sweaters, jackets, like all the things. And one year I saw there was a Star Wars crocheted action figure set. And so I bought it and then I gifted it to him for Christmas. And he was like, "You just gifted me work." And I was like, I did. It's the gift that keeps on giving, because I'm gifting it to you and you will make it and then you will gift it back to me. And so let me just take you down the characters that I have.
Jabba.
Mm-hmm. And does this look a little familiar? Little Princess Leia coming in. Mm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Looks a little familiar. I think so.
Yeah.
Screenshot of that one. Okay. And C-3PO. Mm-hmm. Yep. C-3PO. Mm-hmm. Of course, we've got R2-D2.
He's my second favorite.
Have to. And Chewie. He's a little out of shape, but he's there. And Stormtrooper, obviously. And now Yoda, he has seen better days. He lost an eye, and I don't know where it is. And then, of course, we have Darth.
He's developed another vision.
Mm-hmm. We have Darth. And we have Luke. His lightsaber is a little crooked. We have Hans. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have Mandalorian. So that is my Tchotchke Showdown. And what's fun about these, I don't actually play with them, but at Christmas time, I have a Star Wars themed Christmas tree. Yes, I do. It is not the one that is like, I don't know if you've ever seen the Star Wars Christmas tree where they turn it into Darth Vader. It's a black tree. It's very cool. I've always wanted to do that. It is not that. It is just a small tree that has Princess Leia at the top and then Star Wars theme ornaments throughout. But it's not that time of the year. So we won't get into my holiday tchotchkes until later on in the season.
I've got the Grogu Christmas.
Nice.
So
I love a Funko Pop, Tony. You know I'm a fan.
Yep. That gotta go on the tree.
Gotta go. Well, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Tony, for coming and talking to us about your series, for writing the series, for being part of the group. We just love having you here in the space and your contributions to the site, in addition to your many contributions to the stoicism section. So as we like to say at the Sober Curator, getting sober matters, but staying sober matters more. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Alysse Bryson. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep it sober. Thanks for tuning in, because let's be real, we're way more fun than your ex's drunk texts.
If you laughed, learned, or just need more of our voices in your life, honestly, I mean, who wouldn't? Hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and send this episode to your sober or your I swear I'm only drinking on the weekends besties.
And if you have a story, feedback, or hey, maybe you just want to slide into our DMs like it's 2012, well, you know we're here for it. Find more curated magic at thesobercurator.com. And remember, getting sober matters, staying sober matters more. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep it sober.